And a very warm welcome, and it is a warm welcome, certainly here in London, to Talking Industry. My name is Andy Pye. I'm consultant editor of DFA Manufacturing Media, which publishes a range of print and online publications relevant to manufacturing and automation. Today's topic is about the benefits of digitalization in manufacturing. And in a moment, I will introduce our excellent four speakers who are appearing in front of us now. And I do that in reverse order so that we finish with the first of our speakers, and then they'll go naturally into their presentation. Now, it's not a webinar, it's a panel discussion. So we encourage not just our speakers to talk to each other throughout, but we'd like you to pose your questions and comments in the chat as well while we're going along. So as of now, any comments or questions that you'd like us to cover, please introduce them into the chat as quickly as possible, and we will take them at any appropriate point in the presentation. We don't just do a Q&A at the end, as might be the case with a traditional webinar. So don't be shy. We want to hear from you and as quickly as possible. The one thing we do ask is if you have any affiliation to a commercial organization, please don't use it as an advertising opportunity. That's really reserved for our panelists, but we're looking for objective comment and questions from users or potential users and so on. I'm sure everyone's familiar with how to use the chat, but if you're not, it should be at the bottom of your Zoom console. And if you can't see chat immediately, click on the three little dots and some more options will arise, one of which is chat. So that's how you access the chat. So really, we thought that what we would try to cover today would be how to further exploit the benefits of digital transformation, digitally transformative concepts to improve manufacturing efficiency and competitiveness. And, you know, we all know, I think, that the UK is perhaps not in the fast lane when it comes to this. So we're not here to beat up the UK. We're here to work out what the positives are that we can point in their direction, and perhaps how we can overcome some of the limitations of the way that they're not necessarily exploiting things like IIoT, Industry 4, smart factories, digital twinning, machine learning, analytics, artificial intelligence, lots and lots of opportunities. Now, as part of that activity, we've just posted a poll. And we're doing this so that we can find out perhaps how you yourselves are currently placed in terms of your progress on your digital journey. So we'd encourage you, if you would, to fill that in while we're talking, and we'll refer back to it in due course. So please fill in the poll as soon as you can. Okay, now we've broken up this session into four parts. And so I'm going to start, I'm going in reverse order, as I said. So the fourth part will be about supporting brownfield sites in how to capture data from existing legacy and assets. And that will be done by Tony Coughlin, who is Managing Director of Turk Banner. He has a really interesting background. He's worked for many blue chip companies, but has also served in the Royal Australian Navy as an avionics engineer. So that's a very, very wide background. And he'll be covering that element. Before that, a long-serving panelist on our Talking Industry journey, which is now reached 2 years, and that is Mikhail Lefevre, who is Product Manager Europe for Red Line Controls, and he's responsible for Industry 4.0 and industrial communications. And he's going to talk specifically on how to avoid manually entered data so that we can ensure as much consistency and accuracy as possible. Our second speaker is Lena Vaes, and she's marketing manager of Priority Software, which is a company specializing in ERP systems for growing companies. So she's going to talk about how Industry 4.0 can liaise with ERP in terms of opening the door to connectivity. And she'll also cover some aspects of mobile communications in field service and production floor environments. And first but not least, I guess, and the guy who's got up at a ridiculous hour in the United States to be with us, I think it's now about 4 o'clock in where he is, and that's Thomas Sharp. And he's Vice President, Digitalization, Strategy and Innovation at Nidec Motor. And his role is a wide brief, actually, to develop, implement and execute transformational plans, expanding into emerging and mature markets. So his focus is on structuring startups to get the maximum benefits out of the sort of technologies that we're covering today. And his topic will be transforming manufacturing into an integrated enterprise. So without further ado, I will now hand over to Thomas, and we'll look forward to his presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Andy, and good morning to everyone. I believe it's, for most people, it's a morning. For me, it's a very early morning, as Andy said. I'm 7 hours or 6 hours behind you here in the US. Live in the Midwest area, around St. Louis, Missouri. And besides my non-Midwestern accent, I'm actually from Switzerland. I spent the last 20 years here in the US. And I began my IoT journey with the Nidec Motor Corporation back in 2016. At that time, I joined a specific business unit to really take advantage or to take a new product, a new solution, and lead it to a commercialization. And it was a remote condition monitoring solution. 2018, then I moved over into a more corporate function, where I focus today on technology and business innovation. Digitalization is a part of it. As Andy mentioned, Nidec Motor Corporation, we built motors and control systems for any kind of application. It could start with your little cell phone that vibrates. That's actually a Nidec motor. You can go over to larger control systems. We control pumps for utility water supply, wind tunnels for NASA, and if you have an electric car, these kind of motors could also be manufactured by Nidec. So controls, motors, anything that spins or moves, that's our business. And of course, IoT is extremely important to us too. What does it mean? Digital journey. What are the benefits? What is the value add for us, our partners and clients, and how do we integrate? And then of course, so many new things to consider, new technology, new business models, new processes, new transparency, because with digitalization, you get insights, not always a comfortable feeling, and new interactions with customers and partners, new actions to take. And these all need to be identified, defined, implemented, and adjusted as needed. As we know, Internet of Things, keywords is dynamic. Digitalization or a digital transformation, that is a journey. Topic today, as Andy outlined, the benefits of digitalization in manufacturing. It's a huge topic to discuss, and the individual speakers, I'm very happy and interested to see how it all goes together, because it's such a broad scope. My personal focus lies on transforming manufacturing into a more integrated enterprise. You can call that Smart Factory Plus. If I had to give it a title, it would be how to monetize your knowledge, and why doesn't it always work? Key here is to focus on, in my opinion, on specific aspects. Low-hanging fruits, for example, start with smart maintenance. I believe we had a prior webinar that was about asset management, predictive maintenance, and then additional points are smart product development, smart inventory management, smart supply chain. There's so many smart things to do. So choose your priority, address your pain points, and why not starting with smart maintenance? What are typical opportunities and challenges of IoT in this regard? There are technology and people aspects to consider, but overall, to start the journey, keep it simple. Start small, learn, adapt, and then scale. And as I mentioned before, digitalization is a journey. Because this is a panel discussion, I would like to hand it back to Andy. I hope this was a good enough introduction to stimulate, an introduction to stimulate the discussion. Is that okay with you, Andy?
Let's unmute. Let's start that again and unmute. Schoolboy error there. Yeah, the low-hanging fruit is the key thing, I think. So I thought maybe we could do a quick survey of our panelists, and we'd also like to hear from our attendees, please. What is your low-hanging fruit? What are your pain points? If you had to pick one or two, what would you choose? So perhaps let's start with Tony. What would you identify as being the pain points that are most easily targeted with digital techniques?
Yeah, I think the pain points vary from obviously customer to customer. We see a lot of the pain points as the fact that their machines are so old. So the pain point really sits where, how are they going to start the journey? A lot of people, if new machines come in, they've got like space in the PLC, they've got memory where they can integrate additional things, and that's where they get a lot of that's where there's a lot of confusion in the industry at end users. They want to collect this data, but they just don't know how they're going to start the journey. And I think, the pain point then is quite clear for them, where they're just concerned that there might be a large cost, and that's always puts people off, doesn't it? And there's, when I have a chat in a little while and discuss the Turk banner solutions, we're trying to get people on that journey at a very low cost, and identify hopefully that there's a return on investment with not too much expenditure.
So do you see that one of the fear factor is about how much cost and disruption the change in approach might cause?
Yeah, I think people are starting to adapt now. They're throwing a lot more resource at it. So it depends where what type of end user you go to, how big maybe the projects team is, or the continuous improvement team, because a lot of information can be fed to them, and they don't know if they're getting value out of the information they're receiving, and it can be quite scary. I've heard of some customers invest a lot of time and money into projects, and they're not seeing the full benefits of it at the moment. Right.
Mikhail, I know you have an interest in legacy machines and collecting data, so perhaps that might be one of the pain points that you've identified, and are there others as well? Indeed.
Yeah, I see two main big points. The first one is the adoption by the people. We always think digitalization, we always think technical. Okay, are we able to get the data from this machine to send it to a bigger machine or bigger computer? And at the end, we never think about the people who has to play or has to work with it every day. And what we see is the people adoption doesn't work if the new system is too far or too different than the system or the organization they used to play with during these long years before the digitalization period. I mean, some process exists since several decades in industries, and with digitalization, people or project managers try to change all this organization because they want to use this software or this system. So everybody in the organization has to change its way to think and to organize their daily work, and that's a big problem. If people doesn't adopt the new digitalization organization, it will never work. It will never work. It's the main problem is the people. And the second one, I missed it during I was talking. The second one is about start with somebody else if I get
okay, we'll come back to that. No problem. Yeah. Lena, what would you see as being the pain points with the customers that you deal with?
Well, we see that a lot of companies realize that they need to invest in new technology, but when we go to the actual daily business, we see that a lot of these systems and new technologies are not integrated into a specific system. So you have separate systems with separate silos of data, which don't communicate with each other. We have to enter data 2 or 3 times, which can also cause errors and you lose valuable time. So adopting the new technology is a good thing, but you need to make sure that it's connected and integrated into the entire environment. Yeah,
I mean, that's quite interesting because Thomas said at the beginning, start simple and scale up. So therefore, would it make sense to start in a silo and then think about how you can expand out subsequently? Who would like to comment on that?
Yeah, so I will explain a little bit further. Starting in a silo is not the right idea, I think, but it's finding a platform that is open enough, that give you a future-proof technology to make sure that you can change and integrate other systems time by time. Of course, you don't need to change your entire systems and then the entire work in progress at one day, but you need to start step by step, doing it like department per department, but you need to make sure that the technology is open enough to connect all the new technologies inside and to make sure that you have one database to manage.
So how do you cope with the need to have an overall vision before you start, which I think is probably what you're saying, to on the other hand, starting simple and scaling up later, to which kind of naturally comes back to you, Thomas, I think, doesn't it?
That's an excellent question. And I honestly admit we struggle with that because the new technology, new business models, to draft up a vision where you want to end up on the digitalization journey is almost impossible. I guess you need to take it step by step to really say you want to identify pain points, right? What is most important? How can you address that? For digitalization, another point is at the end, you want to remain relevant in the eyes of your partners and customers. That's absolutely paramount. And the technology is here. That is my belief, right? Digitalization refers to the use of the change in digital support and processes and tasks. The strategic use of technologies, and there are multiple technologies here, and the automation to really keep pace with the changing customer expectations and economic conditions. And I guess nowadays, customers change much more often. Yeah, that's the whole transformation is much quicker than what we used to in the prior 20, 30 years, much faster pace. And that's in response to widespread advancement in the communication technologies. You mentioned it before, machine learning, it's the cloud computing. So that's all there. To try to visualize that where you want to end up as a manufacturer specifically, which is usually a very traditional environment, and encompass all these new technologies, that's a big challenge. And as Lena said, I believe you don't want to be too siloed, because all these individual siloed programs, if you can't connect them, that's a bigger issue. If I were to look into in terms of start small, it's about the ease of deployment, right? Michael, you mentioned that before. The people factor is quite important. If people don't buy in, you have resistance, passive or active, and that's also my experience. You need to get the people on board rather quickly and show them the benefits. And most people with digitalization, they fear they're going to be replaced. That doesn't need to be the main criteria in the cost savings. It's really doing more with tools, yeah. And interoperability is key, scalable, reliable. And I guess, Tony, you mentioned it, retrofitability, where we had an earlier discussion point of machines are old. What can be done with the equipment that is still in use here?
Yes, definitely so. We have some answers from our digital journey. We also have some questions coming in, which is great. Right, well, only 10% of our audience are in the advanced category. 48% are at the beginning, and 14% haven't started. with the remaining 28% being sort of middle of the road. So do those figures surprise anybody? Let's just have a quick poll round. Tony, go on, kick off.
No, to be honest. I was a little bit surprised how many people are at the advanced stage. No, it's quite common. You know, and I think people, I don't know which panelist mentioned it, but I think people are quite, you know, advanced. They have got a lot of data available to them, which they just don't know how to integrate into or how to put it into one viable solution yet.
Thank you. Mikhail, does that surprise you at all from your experience?
Doesn't surprise me. It's more a good indicator because we see the same, and this at the beginning level is new. Is new since the COVID period. Before it was not started most of the time, and we see an evolution in the adoption of digitalization since 3 years. Yeah.
And Lena?
Yes, same with us. Doesn't surprise us. COVID and also Brexit in the UK made sure that there was an acceleration in the adoption of digital technology. And we do see a big difference. When 10 years ago, most of ERP systems were sold to big companies, to big multinationals. And now we see a serious shift going to the small and medium companies.
That's a really good point. And I think one that we should pick up on later is the differentiation between adoption in large companies and adoption in the SME community. So that would be good. Thomas, I don't know if you want to just comment quickly, and I'll then take a couple of questions, and then we'll move on to Lena's presentation.
You're asking, Andy, in terms of adoption rates? Is that your question?
Yes, whether that's a surprise to you. I mean, we have a very international panel here. I've kind of noticed. I'm the only Brit on it, so I'm very interested to get your international view as well.
I am not too surprised. A little bit on the high side, I would say, in what I did not expect in advanced progress. When I look into specifically maintenance environment, services provided through remote monitoring diagnostics, I would say most companies are at a very, very early stage to really use the benefits. So that's manufacturing is a very traditional environment, and providing services in the MRO environment, so maintenance, repair, overhaul. This is at a very, very early stage. So not really surprised, a little bit high on the advanced stage. Otherwise it fits my expectation.
Excellent. Well, we have a comment rather than question from Dean, who says that he suspects, and how can we know, that the 10% of advanced may be tech suppliers and consultants, and the question assumed it was only answered by end users, and that is a relevant point, because we do have a very diverse audience, always from you know, experts down to beginners and students as well, no doubt. So it can only be a guide ever, I guess. And so I take his point on that, and Martin saying, you know, if we could just have end users answer it, that would be a very good poll. So maybe that's an action point that we'll take away, and we'll work on out after the meeting and report back, which we can do with you know, a wider audience than we have on the call, actually. So it'd be quite useful information, and we can report that in our publications as well. Now, it was Prasad who agrees with Thomas that predictive maintenance is one of the low-hanging fruits, and I'm sure we all agree with that. We've done individual sessions on predictive maintenance, and no doubt we'll do more. He also refers to digital dashboards and the automation of production and OEE reporting as being another one. Anybody want to comment on that as a worthwhile contribution? Anybody's got a hand up? No, okay. Well, oh yeah, go on then, Mikhail. Yeah,
Yeah.
just in time.
I was
Yeah,
trying.
yeah, yeah.
No, that's yeah, that's true. That's a long-hanging fruits, and that's the first request we get from the customers when we go on the field. It's smart industry, smart maintenance, or maintenance 4.0, and production performance. That's always the first question we have.
Yeah. Ibuka says in the context of well, he or she calls obsolete machines, and points out that very often these are located in remote locations with poor signal availability, and also the reluctance of people willing to adopt new technologies. So there's kind of 2 points there. So let's have a quick run round on that. Tony, people not willing to adopt new technologies, is that a problem?
No, I think people will, and I think it's just about educating them to how easy it is, you know, and that was one thing I was going to discuss, and I agree with Ibuka, wasn't it, who made that comment. If the infrastructure is not in place, people think, well, do you know what, it's a lot of money to upgrade an old machine. But again, if you put the infrastructure in, it could be future-proof, and when a new machine comes in, so you've got to balance it that way. And one thing, you know, part of my chat will be the capturing of data in these remote locations. You know, one thing we concentrate at Turk Banner on is, you know, wireless I/O, and it's a very simplistic way of getting people on that IoT journey.
Mikhail, that's a question for you as well, isn't it, really? The willingness to adopt new technologies, and you must come across a lot of remote locations where legacy machines are installed, I hope.
And we do that. That's true. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we come across where there is a mix of new machines and old machines, and all data has to be collected. That's a big challenge for the industry, for the industry and people who has to put that in place. That's for sure. That's where you need expert, and that's basically what we do every day, trying to find solution for to connect a new and old system together. And that's a big challenge for customers. Yeah, definitively.
Okay.
But it works. It takes more time.
Okay. Time. Well, time.
Yeah, time.
It's
yeah, exactly.
Thomas, do you want to comment on that, and then I will finally get to Lena and give her the floor.
Yeah, in regards to adoption, it's about the people, right? Because the transparency that digitalization brings in really helps you also understand what are individuals doing. A machine operator, you can measure exactly how long his lunch break is. That transparency is not always welcome. So you're automatically going to have, to some extent, resistance in the adoption rate. And just as a practical example, when you are in the maintenance industry, for example, the person doing the repair, his job security is that something breaks. He can drop whatever he's doing, he runs over, he analyzes the problem, he fixes the machine, brings it up online, and that's his job security. That's then, okay, job well done. The challenge then with predictive maintenance is you try to avoid these unexpected failures. And the question then is, you invest a lot of money in technology. What is the payback? The people that you have to work with, they have different interests. The operations managers wants the savings, the maintenance person wants job security. It's probably also a generational question, right? The younger generation is more open to use all the electronic tools. The older ones probably more fear that this is going to obsolete them. The people factor is absolutely critical.
Thank you. Well, we will come back to the people issue. I think there are two key issues emerging. I think one is from the panelists themselves, who are, emphasising the people issue. So we'll talk about that later. The other one that's emerging in the chat is about justifying the spend. So I'm going to come back to both of those later on. But without further ado, I will hand over to Lena.
Thank you, Andy, and a good morning to everybody again. It's great to be here. I'm Lena, I'm based in Belgium, and my journey in ERP started about 10 years ago. A lot has changed since. So in the recent years, due to COVID and Brexit, many manufacturer companies realized the need to redesign their processes and systems to be more competitive, to survive and to grow. So when we are talking about adoption of new technology, manufacturers do understand that it's necessary to evolve. And we recently conducted a survey in manufacturing companies in Europe and in the US to find out what the real status of their digital transformation is. And what really surprised us, that our key findings show that more than 69% of today's manufacturing leaders are experiencing challenges. That is a lot, that is really awesome, 69%. And the top challenges are limited planning capabilities, limited flexibility in product modifications and changes because of the changing customer demands also, and manual processes that are time and resource consuming. That are the three main issues. So being able to adapt to change is a priority for achieving growth. However, to achieve that, companies should realize that they need a shift in tools and processes, and that's inevitable. So business management solutions today, like ERP, like priority ERP, must be flexible to meet business current and future needs. But as COVID showed us that how our company will look like, how the business model will look like in 2 to 3 years, we don't know yet. So we can try to be ready for change in the future, but we will not know what the future will bring. And that's a big issue today. And to make sure that the businesses can manage with the complexity of the supply chain today, to achieve synchronization from an R&D phase, from the early beginning until the delivery. You can only have that by having 360 degrees visibility in the real time, what's happening in each work cell. So not in the silos, but you need to have an overview of what's happening in every work cell inside, but also outside of the organization. Because in the past, we were always looking for automation, for what are we going to do with our company here internally, automation and integration of systems. But we also need to keep in mind what's happening outside of the company, what's happening with the suppliers, how do we have enough supply from new goods or raw materials, and then the customer demand, which is changing, which is going fast, which is coming in via multiple channels, online, via the sales reps, via many different challenges and ways. And we believe that the only way of having a full view, real-time view on your business is by integrating mobile solutions in the factory itself, on the work floor, where people are monitoring or measuring what they're doing. They add their time, they are registered which kind of materials they're using. We can see how many goods are ready at the end of the cycle. And also people on the road at the field service teams and sales reps, they have access to the full ERP, to all the data to be able to do their job well. So we believe that mobile ERP is a cost-effective way to open up the ERP functionalities to the entire workforce. But that's just the beginning, because we're talking about Industry 4.0, and there we talk about connectivity, making the factories smarter and more intelligent, and converting the factories into smart environments to create a closer cooperation between the business partners, like the suppliers, the customers, and also the employees. And higher productivity, efficiency, and self-managing production processes, where your people, your machines, the equipment you use, the logistical systems behind it, and all the work and process components communicate and cooperate with each other directly on one solid platform, and with billions of sensors embedded into the environment to collect critical production data. The only thing is that the real challenge of if you have all this data available is to exchange, collect, store, and analyze all these types of data. And that's where we come in, a modern hyper-connected ERP platform, not just for automation, but really to actually help organizations to embed data insights into their business processes. For manufacturers, this means that data can be captured at each stage of the process to analyze the productivity, to see how efficient are the people, what is the profitability of every good you produce, or also on all the services that you do besides the production process. So it means that inefficiency can be spotted and acted upon at the source, at the time that it's actually happening. And then we also see a growing integration of artificial intelligence enabled bots in management systems. When I say AI enabled bots, I mean like with your phone where you can talk to Siri. You talk to your phone. Imagine if you could talk to your ERP and say, open a quote for this customer. The ERP will ask you, well, do I add the discount that you did all the previous in all the previous quotes? So the system will help you in how to handle your customer well. They will have access to the history, and we will know how to anticipate on their demand. And if we go a little bit further about the machine learning based BPM, an ERP system can define business processes according to behavioral patterns. Like instead of defining specific business processes in the implementation project, the system will learn what the users are doing and will in turn define the BPM itself. So you don't have to do it yourself. So to conclude, I think the improvement can be realized through data-driven decision-making. It's too important to overlook, but using data to make decisions requires the proper digital foundations are in place, something that many manufacturers today currently lack. So Andy, now I'll give back the floor to you and kick off some questions.
Thank you very much, Lena. Well, one question did come in, which I think we'll rotate to all of our panelists anyway, from Mark, and in fact it was something that occurred to me as well about the use of mobile technology. The issue of data security seemed particularly interesting. Thomas, do you want to comment on what you've heard from Lena and with just a thought on the data security issue?
Yeah, so that's the biggest topic, I guess. If you have a survey with customers or users of these digital systems, number one point, as Lena outlined, is security, data protection. There's no question about that. And the next point, Lena also mentioned, that is the lack of interoperability. And that goes together with the investment that is required and the future proofing. So data security, I believe technology is here. The execution is usually a little bit of a challenge. All these risks associated with IT, the integration into a company IT environment is always a challenge. You have different interest groups, and at the end, IT, cybersecurity breaches, potential loss of IP dictates how far you can go in the integration.
Thank you. Tony, what's your thoughts on the issue of cybersecurity?
Yeah, it's quite a common topic when we go to customers and we try and integrate product. Having a network connection is a challenge to try and get them data. A lot of the things Turk Banner in the UK are focused on is about, when we're capturing data, it is a lot of like condition monitoring data, RFID data. So from a security point of view, it's not high end where like ERP systems are and people could, interrupt the business. A lot of our stuff is more from a monitoring point of view. We at Turk Banner have a number of ways to work with the customer. So we have, when it comes to clouds, we can offer on-cloud premises, so the customer can control, basically the server sits on their own network. They supply the PC. We can send data to a cloud. We can have limitations with bidirectional cloud. These features can be turned on and off. And I think with everything you do, I think Thomas may have been alluding to it, you've got to meet a certain legislation to be able to work in this environment. And I'd be interested to hear Michael's point of view on that, you know, from a real technical product, which Redline is. There is a lot of hoops you've got to jump through. And from, yeah, I think if you're meeting that, again, we've discussed it, we've alluded to it, it's just getting the customer's confidence up and getting the right people around the table to ensure that, you know, they're confident that this works. And, you know, there's people always in every business that will be able to put these people's mind at ease.
Thank you. Well, that's a natural lead in then to Mikhail's presentation, and perhaps you can comment at the same time on the security issue. Your main theme, though, is about manually entered data and how to avoid it. You know, I remember one of our correspondents many years ago who said the best way to find out about my company is to go around at the weekends and peek through the windows, but maybe that's a bit flippant. But over to you, Michael.
Security first, yeah, it's main point coming in since several years. And the tricky point with cybersecurity is not based on one product or one system. It's a global organization. It's every system has to handle its piece, and all system has to all the system has to be thought in the way to secure the system itself. So that's the complexity of cybersecurity. It's a simple, I mean, my device, even if it's a Reliant device is used on the edge, it can be an entry point for to get the ERP system. So it's a concern for everyone, and that's going to be a big challenge for the industry the next years. That's for sure. But we see the question now. It's every project you have this question coming in. It was not the case several years ago, but now it's really the case. Technology, like Thomas says, technology there. I mean, there is no doubt of that. Now it's how to apply it in the industry, because the production industry never been developed in this way or designed in this way. But now we have to adapt it to the industry. There is no choice. Okay.
Okay. And on to your main
topic now. Yeah. Okay. So what we see, it's I mean, everybody knows that. And traditionally, we see the data collection. I mean, on the production was manual. It was paper or Excel spreadsheet. I mean, the manager asked the guy on the production to take 2 or 3 counters. The temperature at the end of every hours or every 30 minutes, how he has to do a tour and check all the values. Was good, but it was a snapshot. It was how say that interpreted by the guy, and it creates a lot of misunderstanding because the data were not always the same or not consistency. Okay, not consistent. So, and that's where sorry, there is a point before I add. That's where Thomas and Lina's problem probably, because when you don't have consistency on your data arriving into a system like Thomas and Lin has, it's a problem because the system has difficulties to work. It's if you have on one shift, if you have a big difference, it's a nightmare for them. And that's where digitalization is very important, because digitalization is going to take the raw data directly on the production and remove all this human inaccuracy and the time. I mean, all this human inaccuracy. Okay, and it is going to be able also to create bigger database. So instead of asking a guy to go every half an hour or every 2 days to get counters, you can get values every 2 minutes, and that's this quantity of data going to create a huge amount of potential analysis behind with system like ERPs and Thomas, I don't remember your system. It's a big difference for people to understand their production, how it works, where the issue is, where the slowest machine is, what we have to what we have to improve, where we have to invest, and why we have to invest, and how much we can gain because we're going to invest in this part. It's a huge difference, and that's the difference between having a digitalization data reporting or data collection and a manual data collection. The other thing is when you have a big factory or big group, and you have different factories over the world. For example, you have I don't know, one in France, one in Germany, or one in UK, and people in these countries have different culture, different way to report, and the organization is different. And for this group, it's very difficult to have counters, or the calculation going to be done differently depending on the factory. So it's very hard to compare which site is more valuable or more efficient than the others, and because the calculation is not done differently. With digitalization, you remove all this culture. It's much more objective, the data they get at the high levels, and that helps a lot for the investment and to put money on this factory and the others, because I mean data then doesn't lie. I mean that's what it is, okay? And digitalization going to help to get this type of comparison. And the last one, it's about the production improvement. I mean, more data you have, better understanding, like I said earlier, better understanding you have of the production, where you have to put the money, and where the team, how the team has to react in this condition and this condition, and also the team going to get more data about how it works, and they're going to be able to adapt in events. So if I have the line 1 stopping, what I do? Most of the time, actually, what they do, it's, well, we're going to wait, it works again. But if they have more information, they can say, okay, it's going to be blocked or not supplied during, I don't know, 30 minutes. We can do something else in between. And they can adapt that time work more efficiently. And that's a big advantage of digitalization. Oh, that's what we see. And that's where Reliant can help a lot, because like we said, system and production are very different. I don't know if it's English, but very you have different brand, different system. It's not always easy to get data from production systems or devices, and that's where Reliant helps a lot with the products and the solution we offer.
Thank you, Mikhail. A couple of questions have come in, which I think we can circulate to everyone because it's relevant. And the question was, how do you estimate the improvements potentially achievable in your company from data-driven decision-making? And this comes back a little bit to the spend justification issue. You know, we need to be able to estimate the value, I guess, of improvements so that we can justify the investment and the return on investment to justify the start. And that came from Alain and was endorsed by Matt. So I'm guessing this is quite a key issue. You know, how do you come to justify the spend you're going to make, and you know, in terms of switching over to decision making based entirely on your data. Shall I start with Lena and then go round the table?
Yeah,
the virtual table.
ROI is a heavily discussed subject also in ERP. My question is, how do you measure the fact that people don't have access to data or don't have the possibility to work in an efficient way? If people have to enter data twice, it's okay to do that. But if you want to invest and change that, then you need to know what it brings. So I think it's very difficult because you with an ERP, you will invest on many different areas in your company. You will increase communication inside your company, but also outside. You will optimize your processes. You will have greater transparency. So how can it not bring an ROI? So the only thing is how much. That's difficult to tell in advance. And so it depends on how many users do you have, how many people. If like we see a lot of manufacturing companies still reporting hours on paper. If you remove the paper and you do it automatically in your system, you will lose. You will need a few less people that bring the paper data to the system to make it digital. So in every area you automate and every new technology you insert, you gain more insights and you win. How much, you never know in advance.
That sounds a little bit worrying because, you know, a lot of people would need to know something about the business benefits in order to invest the time and resources to go forward. Mikhail, sounds like you want to jump in there.
Before the digitalization investment or after the digitalization investment, they want a ROI in your question? Sorry, it's not clear for me.
I assume this is at the beginning, you know, that you need to have some clear idea of what your benefits are going to be, you know, before you invest the time and energy into it. Yeah. Tony, well, you must have a view on this. You know, what's do you get involved at that level with you know, calculating business benefits for customers?
Yeah, like from the start, I tend to throw it back to the customer sometimes initially. So if I use an example of vibration temperature monitoring of a asset, so VT, whether it's VT or CT, you know, one question I'll always put to the customer is, you know, when did your last asset fail? What was the production downtime? What was the repair of the cost? You know, and it's always interesting to see if they know what that is and what it's costing their business. Because, and again, you know, what we're talking about today and what I'll be talking about is capturing that data. For example, you know, we have a very simple starter kit, which is a vibration sensor. It goes into a wireless device, so there's no infrastructure needs to be put in place. We send a wireless signal. We can put it on their network. We can put it into a cloud. They can consume data straight away. So if we capture that signal, especially in the way the world is at the moment, you know, I think everybody in this forum will have issues with raw materials. If you can capture something, that is a very simple way to justify the ROI. If you can be proactive and predictive, and the same with any of our sort of starter kits, whether it's OEE, what's the cost of that person walking around to capture data? You know, if we put a wireless sensor or we use an existing infrastructure and just give you a simple count, how many products are going through, getting your throughput, getting your input. That's a very simple thing without somebody sitting there and manually doing it. And then we integrate it straight away into an ERP system. There's got to be a cost saving without even drilling down too much into it. And that sort of applies to anything, you know, whether it's a level, somebody's walking around every single day checking the levels of sumps on HPUs or whatever the application, there's always a cost, and the customer should know what that overhead or what the downtime does cost.
Yes, that's right. I mean, engineers love numbers, so it should be possible to get this information. Prasad,
well, it doesn't always. I was going to say, it doesn't always apply to the engineers, does it?
No.
You know, the people we talk to now are operations, are production people, because they know how long their downtime was for a particular reason, whether it's as simple as an e-stop. You know, how long was that down for? Was it simple? Could we have been a little bit more proactive?
Yes, Thomas, you've been patient. What's your view on the recent discussion.
Yeah, to identify the real costs is one of the biggest challenges, because I don't think that the companies are really true to their cost base, because it also means transparency. Specifically, and Tony just gave the example about this condition monitoring system. It is my belief, based on my experience, we have identified numerous use cases where we were able to do a cost avoidance using such a remote condition monitoring system with the first incident that you avoided. But then the question is, okay, so you saved that money. It was a substantial cost avoidance in terms of downtime avoidance. You can do the math. You know how much you would have spent to repair it with a traditional case of 4 hours downtime. Now you got it down to 30 minutes because you proactively repaired it. The next challenge then is, how can't you just multiply that across your organization? That's a typical use case, and I'm sure other manufacturing places have very comparable issues. And I believe, when I look into my own organization, we don't work off the same cost base. And Mikael, you mentioned it before, that's one of your challenges with taking the data. So calculating an ROE in advance, it can't be done down to the penny. That's my belief. It's a path. It's that you go through and you learn when you walk that path. So cost transparency is absolutely key.
Very important. We've got another poll coming up for our for our audience, and you know, it's just a simple one, really. A binary question. What's more important to you, operational benefits or business advantages? Ooh, let's see what they say. While we get answers to that, I'll refer to a couple of comments and questions in the chat, which I suspect are actually quite common. Prasad says, I think this is where the strategy of the organization comes in. Sometimes disruptive new technology needs to be brought in as part of strategic initiatives where return on investment is not the only driver, which I guess is what Lena was saying in her presentation, and probably something we'd all agree with. Matt, I think, is, you know, this is the dilemma. You know, the issue I have is that we have to spend a bunch of time to generate a solution and then put a cost against that. However, you then need to convince the money folks that your solution will pay for itself. You know, and it's easy to be general to say, well, you know, it will make us more efficient, we'll be able to build more products. But if you can't put a monetary value on that, then, you know, that dialogue becomes very difficult, because none of it is free. You know, and he mentions cloud storage as an example. You know, it's an ongoing cost which ultimately has to be passed on to the parts you're producing or whatever. So it's that discussion between, you know, the accountants, the finance side, and the production side, and how you make the case for it most efficiently. And, you know, probably Prasad is right that it's easier in some companies than others. Whether that's a size effect on a company or it's just about the vision that individual companies have. So let's just explore that quickly by going round, starting with Mikhail.
For the return on investment and all this thing, yeah, sometimes it can be complex. When I see it's all people invested in this direction never discover something they can improve. It's there is always a return on investment. Sometimes it's a simple display. It's a stupid display. Sometimes it can be more advanced systems, but I don't see customers who never got any return on investment after digitalization. I mean, if it's a problem of money or budget, I think the best is to do a proof of concept first and see what it says and see the results you have. I mean, you don't have to develop a very advanced system with the cloud and artificial intelligence behind and everything to see result and potential of digitalization. You have a very simple application you can develop internally and give you results. Then it just, as soon as your the factory or the team sees the value of this investment, they will continue. But yeah, I can understand the first step is hard to do, but I guess with a simple proof of concept, you can see the value very quickly.
Yeah, so it's very much back to that sort of start simple, I suppose, build confidence in the way that these new technologies are going to contribute, and that really is where you came in, Thomas, isn't it? So so perhaps we should come back to you for a bit more.
With a customer who did a POC, he just realized that the slowest machine of his production line was not the one they thought. It was another one. So they were investing on a machine which wasn't the slowest of the production. And this type of thing, I mean, the return on investment is almost instantaneous. That's English.
Instantaneous.
Instantaneous, yeah. Yes. It's 12 hours done. It's amazing. I mean, that's so stories like this, like Thomas say, we have thousands of stories like this. Not always as simple as this one, but yeah, we have hundreds of stories like this.
Thomas.
When you look into data that you collect, we haven't mentioned it today yet, but I wanted to bring it out. It's the big data as a keyword, right? Data collection has been done for so many years. That's no art, that's nothing new. But really, which data is relevant? And I guess, Mikkel, you mentioned that before. You just get a unified base of data entry, so you know you work off the same base. That's a challenge in this regards. It's going over from big data to small data and then smart data. Take the relevant data. With those examples, we mentioned it before, starts small. Identify a pain point that is clear to everyone that you're working with. This is the issue we have. This is what it costs us. This is what we want to avoid, an end result you have in mind. And with the technology, you want to attack that. Just keep it small at this point, right? Build that use case. And then important is you have the data. Most important is act on it, right? You have the insights, take action, do it. And then really important is speak about it, evangelize that within the organization, because it's usually not a self-seller, let's say it that way. People are busy with all kind of activities, so it's a constant education internally and externally with your stakeholders. Get people thinking, and if you have that momentum going, people come back with new ideas saying, hey, okay, here I have another issue. How can we address that with technology? Yeah.
Thank you.
Factor.
Yes, I mean, having a people champion or technology champion is a great thing. Lena, let's come back to you quickly about what you've heard from the chat and the other comments about, getting this going.
I want to elaborate on what Thomas is saying, because he's right. I focus on one pain point, and via a phased approach, doing it step by step. Once you start with a small process, you will see the value, and then people will get triggered to invest more and to take the next step. But you need to do it slow, and we see, especially with the smaller and the mid-sized customers, that they want to see the value, and once the first step is taken, the rest of the journey will follow.
Perfect. Yes, I think that's a very good summary. Right, we're down to you, Tony. We have your contribution on supporting brownfield sites in capturing data. You may also want to comment on the discussion we've just been having about how to get started and your experiences there. And also, perhaps one thing I can throw in as a curveball is, do you ever get rid of manually generated data, or is it just, at some point you have to accept that some of that will be there?
Yeah, so I guess, well, I've been at Turk Banner 11 years now, and started from a key account manager all the way up now to managing director. So I think I've been on the journey with some of the customers. And to answer your question about replacing people, yes, Sometimes we do, for vibration monitoring, it's not a requirement for that person to go around and every Monday or once a month take that value of that vibration. What we may do is, if we're monitoring it 24/7, we're giving that customer peace of mind, one, that his asset's being monitored, but we're also working with them so they're more efficient. So when the motor has got a failure or has got a warning or alarm, they're going to where the issue is. So they're not wandering around site trying to take readings. They're wasting 90% of their time maybe going around taking readings of serviceable assets. They're being more efficient. So there's one thing that could, unfortunately reduce the headcount, or maybe a third-party company come in, but there's benefits to the customer. Also with manual OEE, there's solutions we've got that are plug and play, and supporting those legacy equipment, supporting those brownfield sites who don't have the infrastructure. That's the benefit. That's the journey we're putting it on. And Thomas has mentioned it, and we've all mentioned it. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to put people on that journey. So we've got what I would call IoT enabling devices. So we've got devices which will help things like OEE, so it will give them instant information about availability, performance, even the quality. It'll even help them with sustainability. Sustainability is a big question at the moment for everyone, with IP67 solutions, with VT, with energy, so they don't have to make panels and invest in large equipment. Having plug and play things for the production line is of importance, very much so. And to give you an example, of consuming data straight away. So, plug and play solutions, we try and approach it from the simple fact that is the customer, get them started on the journey by giving them a simple starter kit. One thing, I find with customers, and I'm at a customer tomorrow who's got multiple, it's a brand new site. I say brownfield, but it's only like a couple of months old, but he's had multiple machines come in from multiple vendors, but he does want to do condition monitoring. He wants to do a little bit more analytics, and he hasn't got the infrastructure in place. So that's a very simple way to say, hey, let's get you some data. One feedback from customers is quite often, what cloud do I pick? There's so many clouds. It's a huge problem. They want to get on this journey of digitalization. They don't know where to go. One thing we tend to do with our customer base is just say, hey, have a go at it, have our cloud, just have a go at it. There's no cost. Get a sensor, put it on a motor. We've got a learning algorithm, take the vibration. We've got a way of capturing OEE data. Just get some counts, just replace that manual process and get you counting automatically. Straight away, they go, okay, at least the information's, there's a quality thing. Quality, you're getting an accurate count, you're not taking away that human error, and it could be something else. It could be an energy. It could be, you name it. I think that's super important to help the customer on the journey and understand what they want, identify, which we mentioned, their bottleneck or their pinch point. Another thing is we're trying to adapt some of the legacy machines by trying to take the information from the shop floor straight to a cloud. So sensor to cloud, we may have all heard of IO-Link. IO-Link's a great, it's not new. It's been around for many, many years. IO-Link is a brilliant way of collecting data on sensors on the shop floor. But legacy machines is a challenge because there's maybe no room in the PLC. There's old PLCs, they've got no memory inside it. That's big cost. They might even not be network type machines. So what we're trying to do is encourage them to say, well, we'll come along and collect that data. So we get IP67 solutions with field logic controllers. Don't have to be a PLC, but what we do, and I think it's important, is to pre-process the data for the customer. So when he gets that signal, i.e. a sensor, which is IO-Link, and he wants to see, do you know what, would it benefit me from knowing the signal strength of a laser sensor? So I can be more proactive with my preventive maintenance. So an example, what we do is the preventive maintenance is, you know, in a food and beverage factory, you know, you've got engineers going around just cleaning the lens of a sensor. It may be once a day, maybe once a week. It's not efficient. Well, why not, you know, say to them, well, this snippet of information, we can tell you when to go and clean it. And surely that should work to the customer's advantage from an efficiency point of view, because then that maintenance person who was going around cleaning sensors can go to actually where required to do maintenance. And the same principle applies for any application, really. And I think when you put them on that journey, they identify the ROI straight away. You know, they go, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? And that's important. And it's important, you know, to give them all the options. Say to them, do you want it in your IT infrastructure? Do you want it in a cloud? Or do you want to integrate to another cloud? And that's one thing we're trying to do. We're a very open platform, you know, multiple protocols. You know, have they got a central maintenance system? They want to benefit from digitalization. These are all questions we want to work with the customer. We want to say to them, you know, what's your end goal? You know, it's not about, we'll get you the data. And I think that's mostly a little bit different to, you know, the people that are trying to understand what they can get the benefits out of ERP, CMS systems. We'll just give them that journey. We'll give them those snippets of information that they can go, do you know what, that was quite useful. And I think that's a huge benefit to the customer.
Thank you. We've had just a quite interesting comment actually in the chat while you've been talking. And just summarizing basically the second part of it, it just says that there is always a risk in new technology. I think it's something we guess we'd all agree with. It took a long time for people to move to PLCs from relay logic. And we had identical discussions in the 90s when the internet emerged. What's the ROI of that? So we probably still can't work out what that was in terms of pounds or euros. Or Australian dollars or anything else, but you know, every company now embraces it. So ROI and a few other commenters have made the same point. ROI is only part of the story, isn't it? You know, so we're kind of coming towards the end. I'd like to throw in a slightly more technical question at this point, which came in quite early on. From Jose Paulo, and it's specifically about predictive maintenance. And this is actually something we have been talking obliquely about quite a lot. And how can companies and suppliers offer systems that can be used in different applications and machines without, he says, the majority of those companies not having experience or the deep knowledge of the processes? How do you create that knowledge? So he says that I believe our industry, I presume he means his, it's quite mechanically structured, and crossing over or explaining the understanding is a big challenge. So I suppose it's, you know, how transportable are your solutions, say Tony, to start with, from one application to another, and how much do you need to know about the process in order to make them work?
Yeah, and that it is a point that especially Banner Engineering identified many years ago. We brought out vibration equipment, and what we were finding is that we were relying on the customer doing all the integration, and you know, they had to learn our product. They had to learn, you know, maybe the process of their own machines and that. So we've done this for a number of different products. We employ somebody. So for example, if I use vibration of an asset, we've developed a learning algorithm which automatically learns the state of the machine over a particular time. So it will run for a period of time. It will create a warning level. It will create alarm level. It will set the baselines for them. So it takes away that need to understand each and every customer's, because it's a bit of a generic thing. You know, each and every asset is different the way it operates. But If you look at certain values, you know, one thing we went to from a digitalization point of view as us to put people on that journey is within our sensors, they're digital sensors in a way. So we can select in the sensor, we can select velocity, acceleration, Curtis, crest, we can temperature, we can select all these values. So, and it's all then selectable within a program to help that customer, because different assets, they'll need maybe a speed monitoring for spectral band measurements. So we're trying to take that heartache out for them and giving them, you know, as much of a plug and play solution as possible. And that's important, you know, because that is another thing which comes in the investment. If you've got to get then somebody to integrate it because you don't have the technical knowledge on site, there's an additional cost, and then they may have to then support it. So there's some ongoing cost. So we try and keep it as one, you know, plug and play solution, which is, you know, quite a common platform, which works for a large portion. I'm not saying it works for every customer, but, you know, it helps. Like OEE, you know, the simple fact is it's just a count. Just, you know, give them that value. You know, if they want to then do the back end, there's a lot of high-end OEE software out there that will understand the reasons why machines, the drop-down menus. But we're just the first point there, Paul.
Thank you. Mikhail, that's also a relevant question to you, I guess, isn't it? You know, about how transportable your solutions are from one application to another. You're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, in the mechanical environment is going to be, in this environment, we need the torque banner to help us to collect the data. But yeah, as soon as we have the information, the data, we can very easily send the data where the system, where the data is needed, or we can calculate locally. It's very easy. I mean, we know data is not is new for industry, and I mean, the education, people who has to maintain the industrial environment, the production, never been educated around the data. They've been educated around automation. They've been educated about maintenance, maintenance plan, all these things, but never around data. That's not the education we used to have at that time. So, and the system are, at least for Red Lion, we adapt the data, I would say that management, but with automation mind. So it's very easy for people who has difficulties to adapt to IT system to adapt to ours. And I think it's true for Red Lion, but I think it's true for most of the industrial system who wants to play into the industry actually, or the digitalization actually. They don't want to introduce IT style into production because they know it won't work. I mean, it's two different worlds.
Thank you. Lena, do you have a view on this?
Yes, with Priority Software, we provide an open platform, an open ERP platform, to make sure that via APIs or via software development kits, it's possible to connect external or third-party solutions to the platform. So it's all about syncing the data, make sure you can do the exchange in two ways, syncing data to the ERP, but also to the other side. And then we use the insights, the data from the external or third-party technology together with all the data in the ERP, which is connected to the demand of our customers, to our suppliers. How are the delivery terms going? And all these data together, this will enable customers to do like the real predictive maintenance. How many pieces do I need to produce next month? Is there a maintenance in between? So then we know it has an effect on the delivery term. So it's all about connecting all the data together and bring it to one system to make the right decisions. And I think one thing to mention on top of that is to make sure that if you connect all these external platforms or systems to one platform, to make sure that you can still update your technology, and to make sure that you can still install the new upgrades and go on with the new technology. We see a lot with other software suppliers, where if you want an update of the ERP platform, you need to invest again in all the connections. And that's crazy. So you need to make sure that you have an open system that can evolve and keep the integrations as they are, and at which you can still optimize, but you don't need to rewrite them every time that you do an upgrade.
Thank you. And Thomas, that brings it round to you. I suppose where we started in many ways. Do you want to sum up just what you've heard from your perspective? Maybe talk a little bit about the people issue. We're getting quite tight for time, so I'd like to wrap up in the next 5 minutes. But if you have any further comments, then that would be very welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. And also to comment what you just mentioned, Line, future-proofing and interoperability is absolutely key. You're dead on. Today, with all the data that is available, right, users expect access to more real-time data at a substantially reduced cost. And what they use it for is remote monitoring diagnostics that then leads over into operational efficiency gains and over into predictive maintenance. And Tony, you mentioned an example before for route-based monitoring, as it is called, I believe. And that's absolutely correct. To get the costs, real-time data at a reduced costs, route-based monitoring has its limitations. So digitalization is here as a tool to make that person who walks the route more efficient. That person can do a lot more. He has the application experience and knowledge, very valuable. That person should not be reduced or eliminated, but that person now can do a lot more with the knowledge he has. And if he is trained using these digital tools, he will become a lot more efficient. And that's job security too. So the value will not just come from sensors collecting data, but from the responsive actions that still people take for things connected to the internet. So my recommendation would be focus first on assets and process optimization, and not the labor cost or maintenance budget reductions, right? Do more with what you have before reducing to what you need, if that makes sense. Efficiency gains with the resources you have before you start to optimize your main focus cost base and labor costs. It's really asset and process optimization. Back to you, Andy.
Thank you very much. Okay, there's a lot more that's come in through the chat, but it's one of those occasions where the chat has been so active we can't cover everything. But just for those who have attended, we've done our best to answer most of the questions. We'll send you a copy of the chat. The webinar is available on demand, not just to those who've registered today, but also anybody who didn't make it today but would like to see it in future or a second time. And something new as well is that we are now offering these as a podcast. So you can even listen to us in the car. My colleague has just put in a link for one of the kind of podcast sources, but it's available on Spotify and iTunes, and other equivalent products are available. So many ways to get in touch with us, and also because there are a few unfinished links and definitely some questions to individual speakers as well. We also invite everyone, panelists and attendees, to come onto our LinkedIn platform, our Talking Industry LinkedIn platform, and we can continue discussions ad infinitum. Sometimes they've lasted 2 weeks to cover some of these questions, and indeed any further questions that come up as well. So it just remains for me to thank all of our attendees for attending and for giving us your time for what is pretty much an hour and a half, and to our excellent contributions from our 4 panelists this morning as well. So thank you ever so much to everybody. Keep cool, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers.
Thank you.